We've received quite a bit of interest in my free to be workshop. So to that effect, beneath this video is a link that will give you a description for the workshop. And we've also included a special discount. So if that's something you would be interested in, I would invite you to click that link, and I hope that you would find the course to be quite beneficial. Anytime you have an ongoing, long-standing relationship with someone, there's going to be a strong potential for learning one another's flaws or differences. We can have disagreements or mistakes or miscalculations can come along. And in healthy relationships, we just sit down and we talk it through, and we come to the determination that we can take those differences or those disagreements and use it as ways to get to know one another, and we can be constructive in the way that we approach those kind of things. That's just what healthy people do. Narcissists, they're not healthy. They've got this very strong need for control, and they have a need for entitlement, and they want to be superior, and they want to have an edge over you. And so instead of going into that healthy dialogue, they go into the pattern of scapegoating. And I know that many of you have felt like you've been on the receiving end of that unfairly. I want us to go back and recall what the origin of that term is as we know it in our world today. Back in the biblical days, the children of Israel would have a ceremony once a year where the sins of the people were all placed onto the back symbolically of a goat. And that goat might be beaten, and then it was released off into the wilderness. And there, the guilt and the impropriety of all of the people were symbolically ascribed to that goat. And as the goat left and wandered, then that meant all of their negatives wandered with that, and they were absolved. Of course, the next year, all sorts of other improprieties would build up, so they'd have to crank it up and do it all over again. See, that's the prototype for the narcissist. Whenever there's a strain or whenever there's a difficulty, rather than saying, well, let me just go ahead and take it upon myself, they look for a goat. That's you. And they look for someone that they can blame and put all of the negatives onto, so that they can absolve themselves of whatever difficulties they might have contributed to it. Now, at the base of a narcissist's tendency to scapegoat are four hidden motives that feed into that, and it's going to be so important for you to recognize what those motives are. Now, first and foremost, when a narcissist feels the need to scapegoat you, one of the motives they have is they're trying to cover up or completely deny their own glaringly obvious flaws and personal difficulties. I mean, these individuals have deep histories of broken relationships, but they simply can't admit their contribution to it. They routinely mismanage conflict and strain. They have difficulties with anger and tension. They misread people constantly. But for them to admit flaws means that they have to accept their own shame. And part of the reason that they need a scapegoat is that they have a deep fear of coming to terms with their own shame. Deep down, it would be their way of saying, maybe I'm not as special as I want to think that I am. And so much of their life is a compensation for a lack of specialness that taking on that personal responsibility and introspection is just way too much for them. So they go into the scapegoating. A second hidden motive for the scapegoating is that they have a fear of being vulnerable. And what I mean by that is they have a fear of other individuals seeing some of their difficulties. Not only do they have their internal shame, but this is what I refer to as shame that comes from external sources. For example, they're thinking, well, if my flaws or if my miscalculations are brought out into the open, people out there are going to reject me. They're going to expect me to change or reform. They might judge me, or worse, they might mock me. And so rather than thinking, I need to go ahead and just take responsibility for all of this, no, what they do is they say, hey, guys out there, it wasn't me, it was that person over there. And that's where the goat comes in. If they have somebody that they can blame, then they're not going to have to come to terms, or they're not going to have to struggle and deal with the rejection that might potentially be there. If they say, mea culpa, my fault, I have to take it. They can't do that because they fear judgment so desperately. A third motive that causes them to go into the scapegoating mode is we go back to their need for entitlement. They want to be in the entitled position. They desperately want to be adored and admired. They want to be deemed as beyond reproach. And so in their minds, if everybody else out there thinks that I'm flawed, then that's not going to work. And so scapegoating is their way of compensating for any potential for shame. They want to claim an extra measure of self-righteousness. Look how good I am. Look how excellent I am. Look how more enlightened and smart that I am compared to everybody else. And so if they have a scapegoat over there that says, there's the problem over there, then that allows them to hold on to that entitled kind of way. It's a compensation, again, for their internal shame and for their fear of being externally shamed. It's like, no, none of that matches with me because, you see, I'm above all of that. Which then leads to a fourth motive for them to find a scapegoat, and that is they've convinced themselves that they want to and they need to be in the power and authority position over you. See, there's a notion that's completely lost on narcissists, and that is ultimately our long-term influence with one another is when we're able to identify with each other's shared humanity. You make mistakes, so do I. You've miscalculated. Yeah, that's happened to me too. You've mismanaged emotions. I've been on that page myself. And so as we talk about it and we share that, then that's when we're going to have influence because we consider ourselves to be fellow sojourners. Whereas the narcissist is like, there's no way I'm going to admit to any kind of problems, not me. And they're going to remind you, I'm better than you. And it's their way of trying to prove to themselves, I should never be shamed and I'm never going to be shamed. And as a result, if there's a problem, it's all on you, and it allows them to somehow or another maintain that false narrative that's part of their false self that says, I'm the best person in the room and the rest of you poor people need to understand that. These are individuals who have not come to terms with that whole concept of shame and guilt. They have so much of it on the inside that they need to come to terms with, but it's like, I'm afraid to do that. And as a result, that's where the scapegoating comes in. Now, there's certain behaviors that tend to go right along with that, and I know that you've been on the receiving end of these. For example, you know that a narcissist is in that scapegoating mode when they ascribe blame to you over and over and over. Or when they other you, if we can use that as a verb, or they may other groups of people. You people are over there. You're not in the club. You don't measure up. You're out there. I'm the in person. You're the out person. They're scapegoating when they can't listen to you. It's like, no, I'm going to tell you, you have to listen to me, because in their mind, you're not even worthy because you're a goat. They can be very pushy and argumentative, and as problems come along. Or perhaps if it's a covert narcissist, they just may give punishing withdrawal, but it's their way of saying, we don't deal with arguments and with anger in a constructive kind of way at all. Instead, they cling to contempt and disdain. That's part of them showing that they're in the scapegoat mode. They may nitpick you. They may criticize when things go wrong rather than looking internally. They can run smear campaigns against you. They can ridicule you behind your back, or if you try to confront them about whatever the problem is, they use what I call boomerang communication. You say, hey, there's a problem I'd like for you to address, and their boomerang communication says, me, what about you? And they throw it right back on you. That's the scapegoating. And again, it's important for you to understand this is all because they have not come to terms with that whole notion of shame, and they don't know what to do with theirs. And so they just put it onto your back and they push you out into the wilderness so that you can wander, and they're now somehow absolved. Now, I want you to understand this is a really pathological practice that these individuals get into. Wouldn't it be nice if they could say, if a difficulty comes, I need to take a look at my role in this. But part of narcissism is they have such a high need for control, and they build their alternate reality. They're living behind a false self that they simply are not able to do that. They can't say, you're responsible for me, but I'm for you, but I'm responsible for me. Let's work it in a team kind of way on that. It's just not going to happen. Honesty, openness, self-disclosure is something that absolutely scares them to death. And as a result, they need you to be that scapegoat that somehow or another, if they can just find all sorts of flaws in you, it makes them feel better about who they are. And of course, it's just a false kind of front and a false kind of notion that they're building so much of their life around. So is a narcissist going to be able to take that sense of honesty and responsibility whenever strains and difficulties come along? Well, no. Instead, they're looking for the goat. You are their goat. Think about that. And then that understood, I'm hoping your response can be, well, if that's the case, I think it's time for me to move on to other pastures. I'm not going to be anyone's goat. I'm not going to play that game. Okay. By the way, you notice Gus back there. He's been absent for a while. He's been staying home with Mom some. Gus is no one's scapegoat. He's just a good old dog. He's loyal to me as long as he's awake. Anyway. Glad to have Gus back here with me. If you've not subscribed already, I would encourage you to hit that subscribe button, and there will be a notification bell. Hit that. It won't ring, but hit it anyway, and you'll get notifications. We also have you'll notice the join button down there. And we have a private membership now if you'd like to join that for a nominal fee. It allows you to have access to question and answer sessions that I have once a week with the public, and I love doing it. Laura has hers. I do mine on Wednesday. She does hers on Thursday. We also have extra videos and things of that nature, discounts for some of our courses. If you have a need for counseling, and I know that many of you, as you grapple with these kind of issues that we talk about, want somebody to help you unpack it, I would encourage you to find someone in your area to do that with. And if if you don't have someone there locally, I would encourage you to go beneath. We have a sponsor that has a wide array of counselors who have a great deal of experience and availability. Hit that link and see if they can help you there. In addition, we have my Free to Be course. It's a very extensive course. It's all for the purpose of lots of introspection and what about you kind of questions, very extensive. In addition, we also have books and other resources. I don't want you to be anyone's scapegoat. The narcissist is going to try to make you a scapegoat, but you're not required to carry their strains and their difficulties on your shoulders. And that being the case, when you remove yourself from that role, I'm hoping that it positions you to be steady and objective and calm in the way that you engage with difficulties. And when that happens, I hope it positions you to be a person of consistent and ongoing peace. That's a good goal for each of us to aspire to.